Sorry about that, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to come off there. I was talking about my Developing a Healthy Mind series, and I was just sharing that I was with the body sympathizes with the mind and the mind with the body. But let me reintroduce myself. I'm Johanna from Wounds to Scars, and I talk and write about emotional healing. I'm especially passionate about connecting healing with the scriptures, with the Word of God. So yesterday evening I had dinner with whilst at dinner I was talking to this lady, and she's a neuropathy she does homeopathy. And hello, thank you for joining. And I asked her, I said, how many of your clients do you find have also emotional issues? And she said nearly all. And that just confirms for me it's been well documented that the body sympathizes with the mind, and that a lot of autoimmune diseases is as a result of repressed emotional trauma. So it's really very important, very crucial for us to address emotions, to understand them, to work through them, to let go of them, so that they don't take control and rule us and control our lives, and then we become ill through unresolved, unprocessed emotional trauma. So, I like to say Jesus died that we might live and that we might have life more abundantly. But sometimes we rob ourselves of that abundant life because we keep things repressed, and we develop negative ways of being, negative, unhealthy ways of dealing with things, and it doesn't help. So I want to talk about controlling negative automatic thoughts. And as I was preparing, the scripture that came to mind was 2 Corinthians 10 verse 5, that says, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalted itself against the knowledge of God, and bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. And then I hear, that's all well and good, Joanna, that's fine, but how do you do that? How do you bring into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ? And what does that mean? What will that look like? And what does it mean, casting down imaginations? I won't delve too much into that, because throughout the course of the week I'll pick this verse apart and help you to connect the two with your any kind of emotional situations that you're dealing with. And if you go over to my website, woundstoscars.com, and look on the blog, you will see an interview that I did on Thursday that I'm going to be posting tonight, Monday and Tuesday, with this woman called Doreen Barnaby Toussaint. And she wrote an amazing book about total dependence on God, and what that felt like and looked like, and how in the midst of her struggles, though there were times when she was upset with him, she was still able to trust him. And it's an amazing interview, so do go on over there and read the interview and buy her book. It's available on Amazon. Now, negative automatic thoughts, what are these, and how do you bring them into captivity? Because if you're honest, or if you're like me, you'll think sometimes our thoughts just have free reign, and we allow them to wander on this topic and that topic and here and there, and they seem to be in control as opposed to us being in control. It's almost as if an ant is controlling an elephant, because our conscious mind is supposed to be controlling us. And when we experience negative automatic thoughts, and I say automatic because they just come, at will, and we're not seeming to be able to manage them. So automatic thoughts are quiet and they're repetitive. They repeat, giving messages giving messages about certain situations, and usually it's negative message. So as I said, they are repetitive and they're quiet. So they're not the loud blaring ones, but they, as I said, they will repeat. So I'll go into the rest of it in a bit. Okay, so automatic thoughts are deeply rooted. They are frequent and they are subtle. So sometimes you'll hardly able to recognize the automatic thoughts. They are subtle, so they kind of operate under the surface, but they will trigger actions, and I'll deal later with that later. So they have a powerful influence over our conscious mind. So negative automatic thoughts have a powerful interest over our conscious mind. Now, these thoughts can appear in a negative and absolute manner. So these thoughts will come and it will tell you that this is absolutely what it is. For example, I am going to be in trouble. So a situation happens and you tell yourself, I am going to be in trouble. Or this will last forever. I know that sometimes in as a counselor and working with people, that's kind of the message that they have, that they continually tell themselves that this pain will last forever. And I can empathize, because I remember as I go through my pain, my trauma, feeling that this is so big, I didn't think I'd make it through, a negative automatic thought. So this will break me is another one. Sometimes situations in life can seem so big that it feels like it will break us. It's too late. I can't change. It's too late. This can't be fixed. It's too late. I'm too far gone. It's too late. Or it's my fault. A negative automatic thought. So how do we begin to bring those into obedience to Christ? How do we do that? Is that possible? And sometimes these things can feel, these thoughts feel so absolute, so overwhelming. I think bringing them into captivity to Christ, I think the first step is awareness. Are you aware of your negative automatic thoughts? Do you know what they are? Because when you become aware of them, that's when you can begin to change. So if you're listening to this via YouTube, as I'll post it on YouTube afterwards, so if you're listening via YouTube, or you are going to catch the replay, or you're joining me live, whenever you listen to this, if you can stop and think, what is my negative automatic thought? And try to harness that and be aware of it. That's when the process of getting rid of them will begin. That's the first step. Becoming aware of it. So it's an important step. So capturing every thought and move them into obedience to Christ. How does that happen? And I think first we have to have a guideline. So how do we do that? What's the guideline? Now the guideline from Scripture is in Philippians 4, where it says whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are noble, whatsoever things are just, if there is virtue or praise, think on those things. Okay. So the guideline is, we're told to cast everything down, imagination and everything that exalts itself. So think about your negative automatic thought. Are they true? Because more often than not, they're not true. It is when we overgeneralize, we mind read, we blow things out of proportion, and we exaggerate situations. And so they're not true. So if one of the first things if we can apply that guideline in Philippians 4, I think it's verse 8, if we can apply that guideline, then we can begin to shine the light of that on our thoughts. So when the negative automatic thought comes, say for example, this is going to break me. Is that true? It might be difficult. It might be very hard. It might be challenging. It might be the pain is raw and whatever is happening seems so big. But it is true. Is it true that it will break you? Because I think it's even in that statement, because will is the future, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So if even it can break me is still not true. It is breaking me would be a present situation. And then you have to look at that. Is it breaking you? And then how is it breaking me? So are you getting the gist of what I'm trying to say? To harness your negative automatic thoughts. And again, I'm going to go back to what I start with. It's important to do that, because if we don't do that, it can lead to physical illnesses. And we don't want that, So addressing it is the first crucial step. Being aware of it is the most important part of it. So if you're aware of it already, that's something that you can apply. When the negative automatic thought comes, is it true? I was saying in my earlier scope, when I had to restart, that I just went out to pick up my husband and I had a puncture. And what occurred, what came to my thought, and I verbalized it, and the minute it came out, I'm thinking, ooh, that was a negative automatic thought. This is getting worse, I said, And was that true? No, it wasn't true. All I did was have a punch, but I wanted to get home on time. Well, I promised the boys that I would take them to the field to play football. So the idea was to pick him up really quickly. He was going to eat in the car, and we were going to, it's lovely and sunny, so we were going to take the boys to play football for a while, and then we'll come home on time for me to do my scope. Now, that punch just totally changed everything. And I had to step back as soon as I said that and really deal with the situation, thinking, really, is this true? No, it's not. So we had to deal with that, and he finished eating, and he changed the tire, and the boys fly their paper airplanes, and my daughter and I look at flowers, which we both like, and so we had some time together, and we enjoyed a wonderful time for the hour that we waited in the warmth of the sun. We still enjoy the warmth of the sun. But if I had allowed that thought to take root, it could have spring forth and did more things. I'd become anxious and fussy. I'd rush him to fix it. I wouldn't let him eat on time. The food wouldn't still be warm. And everybody would feed off my emotion, and the whole situation would have changed. The dynamic of what we, where we were would have changed. Now, I could choose to deal with it that way, but I chose to deal with it in a different way, because it was only a puncture. It was only a flat tire. He could fix it. He fixed it. He changed the tire, and we got home. So it's a choice, but bringing every thought into captivity, remember, to obedience of Christ. Now, capturing every thought and make them obedient to Christ. Remember, the guideline is this true? Is it noble? Is it praiseworthy? And, and before I end, I know that one negative automatic thought, we tend to internalize it, and it's on ourselves. We tend to, sometimes people, you'll hear them call themselves names and say really unkind things about themselves and put themselves down, and sometimes people will do it and laugh about it. But even that needs to be harnessed and brought into obedience of Christ, because is that true? No, it's not. So if it isn't true, then you need to stop doing it. You need to stop putting yourself down. You need to stop thinking about yourself in a poor way. You need to know the truth of God's words about you, and what He says about you is positive. He doesn't have anything negative to say about you. So make that be what your focus is. Make that be what you think about. Okay. So just to end, and remember, we're going to continue this series throughout the rest of the week, developing a healthy mind. And this is extended on the website at woundstoscars.com, where the conversation will continue. Where I'll be giving tips and guidelines to resource you in helping you to manage those negative automatic thoughts. Another key thing to do is look for patterns. So one, you're going to apply the guideline in Philippians 4, and one of it is it true? Is it just? Is it praiseworthy? Is it good? Because those are the things you need to think on, even if they're about yourself. And another thing, look for patterns. What are the patterns? What are the connections? Years ago, when I worked in addictions, and when I first get someone to work with, and I'm doing an assessment, one of the things I'd listen for very keenly in the assessment is the patterns. And so I used to work in alcohol, and so I look when this person drinks and what he drinks and how much and the units and all those kind of stuff. I'd listen very keenly for triggers. What are those triggers? What is the situation that, for example, if it's a big binge drinker, which is very difficult to identify triggers when it's binge drinking, but there's almost always something that this person that you can pinpoint, highlight, and say this is why, and then work on fixing that thing with the person, because there's always almost an emotion. Nobody has an alcohol problem because they like alcohol. Well, in my 7 years, I didn't experience that. It was always a self-medicating, repressed trauma situation, and they were using alcohol to facilitate that process. So look for patterns. After the automatic thought, what was the last thought that went through your mind? So you're going to identify trigger. So what was my trigger when I had a flat tire? Mine was, I like to be on time. I had a plan and I wanted it to be carried out the way it was in my head. And so this flat tire was going to interrupt that. So for me, it was, I like to do things on time. That's going to be disrupted. I can't keep my promises to the children, and I can't do things in the timely way I wanted to do. Everything was going to be pushed back. And so on my list of things to do today, maybe I won't get to do some things, and that for me didn't sit well, and so hence I had to choose to deal with it in a different way. So that was my trigger. My to-do list will shrink. I won't get to do everything on time. What is your trigger? Find out what your trigger is. When you have a negative automatic thought, think back. What was the last thing that happened in the last 15 minutes? Or what did I see? What's this? Engage your senses. Is it something I smelled? Was it something I tasted? Something somebody said? Something I hear? Was it a song? Did it take you back to a place that is sad and you didn't want to go back to that place, and the thoughts kick off? Try to identify the trigger. And tomorrow, I'm going to delve some more in identifying the trigger, because I think that's crucial. It's very crucial when we identify what the trigger is, because when we do, that's when we're able to again shine the guideline on it. Is it true? Because that will help us to identify it, harness it, and change the behavior. Okay, now my hope is that after you've know what the guideline is, identify your trigger, that you can be on guard, that you can stay alert to what might trip you up, because it will help you stay attentive to your negative automatic thoughts, and it will help you to challenge them. So if you're thinking poor thoughts about yourself, if you are getting frustrated about an event that has happened, whatever your thought is, remember I went through them earlier. If you're thinking, whatever happens, I'm going to be in trouble, this will last forever, this will break me, there's no solution, it's my fault. If you're thinking any of those thoughts, and there's a long list of negative automatic thoughts, thank you for the hearts. If you're thinking that, think back, step back. What is my trigger? What has just triggered that thought? And then when you have identified the trigger, then you can guard it. You can put some safeguards in place to keep you from, falling. And because sometimes why it's important to be on guard, and why I'm doing this series of developing a healthy mind, because that thought, I'm sure, doesn't stop there. It spirals into more negative thoughts, negative feelings. Then you start to feeling low and depressed, low self-worth, and you resort to whatever it is that you resort to medicate that feeling so it can go away. So I hope you enjoy this, and join me on Wednesday at 7 p.m. GMT time whilst we continue this series. Join me over on woundstoscars.com. Sign up for our free video series and our free ebook, and also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter and on YouTube, and I'll see you on Wednesday for the next installment of Developing a Healthy Mind. See you then. Bye.